It all started on a night that was supposed to be just another celebration of hip-hop, a night where the beats were heavy, the crowd was buzzing, and everyone was showing up to prove they belonged. But nobody could have predicted how quickly it would all spiral out of control. People are still talking about it, replaying the footage in disbelief, trying to understand what exactly pushed Eazy the block captain over the edge, what made Claressa Shields crumble into tears, and how Papoose ended up fighting for his life in a pool of blood. You might think this sounds like an exaggeration, like some internet gossip stretched out of proportion. But trust me, the details are even more shocking when you hear them firsthand. Witnesses who were standing just a few feet away have been sharing what they saw, and some of the accounts are so raw and emotional that it almost feels like you're standing right there, watching everything happen in slow motion. It was already tense before Eazy even walked into the building. For weeks, the underground rap scene had been swirling with rumors about Papoose getting a little too close to Claressa Shields. Some said it was innocent, just two friends supporting each other, maybe even collaborating on something. Others insisted there was more to it. And then there was Eazy, who everyone knew had a complicated history with Remy Ma and a low-key rivalry with Papoose that was never quite resolved. People who knew the backstory could feel it building, like a storm nobody wanted to name out loud. And so, when Eazy and his entourage walked into that venue, the air shifted in a way you could practically taste. They say Papoose was standing near the VIP section with Claressa, talking quietly, maybe just catching up. But to Eazy, it looked like something else. Witnesses noticed how Eazy's jaw tightened the second he spotted them. He didn't even bother to hide it. He just marched straight across the room, his face set in a glare that made people step aside. A few security guards tried to intercept him, but he brushed past them like they weren't even there. And that's when it began. Words thrown like knives, accusations tossed in front of 100 onlookers with their phones out, recording every second. You think you can just pretend you're loyal when everybody knows you're not? Eazy shouted, his voice loud enough to drown out the music. Papoose tried to keep his cool, at least at first. He lifted his hands, almost like he was calming a child, and said something nobody could quite hear over the noise. But it only made Eazy angrier. He leaned in closer, practically nose to nose, spitting out the next words with so much venom people thought he might snap right there. Claressa put her hand on Papoose's arm, probably trying to defuse the situation. She looked worried, her eyes darting between them like she was searching for someone to step in. But nobody moved. Everyone was frozen, waiting to see who would be the first to break. When you watch the video clips, you can almost pinpoint the exact second the last bit of patience drained out of Eazy's eyes. He clenched his fists, and the energy shifted from ugly words to something much darker. In that instant, you could feel the danger, like an electric current zipping across the room. Then, before anyone could react, Eazy lunged. The first punch landed so hard that Papoose stumbled back into the bar, knocking over bottles that crashed to the floor. Claressa screamed, grabbing at Eazy's arm to pull him away, but he didn't even flinch. He just kept swinging, his fists connecting with a sickening thud that made people cover their mouths in horror. Someone yelled for security, but it all happened too fast. Papoose tried to defend himself, arms coming up to block the blows, but Eazy's rage was unstoppable. It was like every grudge and every rumor boiled over in a single violent explosion. One eyewitness, a woman who had been sitting nearby, said she could see Papoose's eyes glaze over as the hits kept coming. He looked dazed, struggling to stay on his feet. Blood started to drip from his nose and mouth, splattering on the polished floor. Even as security finally reached them and tried to pull Eazy back, he swung again, catching Papoose across the temple with a closed fist. That was the moment Papoose crumpled to the ground, completely unresponsive. The crowd gasped all at once, the sound swelling like a wave. Some people were crying, others were shouting for an ambulance, and a few were still recording, their hands shaking so badly you can see it in the footage. Claressa dropped to her knees beside Papoose, her hands trembling as she tried to lift his head. Her face was streaked with tears, her lips moving as she whispered something nobody could hear. The cameras caught her pressing her fingers against his neck, desperate to find a pulse. When she looked up, Her eyes were wild with panic. She kept repeating that someone needed to help him, that he couldn't just lie there like that. You can hear her voice break, the kind of raw anguish that cuts through any noise, and in that moment, you understood just how serious this was. This wasn't just a fight. This was something that could end a man's life. Paramedics arrived within minutes, pushing through the stunned crowd with their gear. They worked quickly, checking Papoose's breathing and hooking up oxygen as Claressa clung to his hand. People who were there say she never stopped crying, never moved away from him, even as they lifted him onto the stretcher. She just kept repeating that he had to wake up, that he couldn't leave her. It was the kind of scene you don't forget, no matter how many times you watch it unfold on a screen. Outside the venue, the chaos continued. The flashing lights of ambulances and squad cars lit up the street, casting everything in eerie blue and red. Eazy was handcuffed, his face still twisted in anger, yelling something about how he wasn't sorry, how Papoose had brought it on himself. Security held him back as he tried to lunge forward again, but by then, it was too late for any more violence. Claressa followed the paramedics into the ambulance, clutching her phone, maybe calling Remy or someone else who needed to know what had happened. The doors closed behind her with a final, heavy thud, and the sirens started wailing as they pulled away into the night. Inside the ambulance, according to one paramedic who later spoke anonymously, Claressa never let go of Papoose's hand. She was whispering prayers, her tears soaking his shirt. At one point, she asked if he was going to make it, her voice so small it was barely audible. The medic said he couldn't answer her. All he could do was focus on keeping Papoose stable, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to keep his heart rate from slipping even further. When they reached the hospital, Claressa followed the stretcher all the way through the sliding doors, refusing to let anyone tell her she couldn't be there. As news spread, social media exploded. Hashtags with Papoose's name trended in minutes. Clips of the fight went viral, some people replaying the moment he hit the floor over and over, others condemning the bystanders for not stepping in sooner. Remy Ma posted a single message, a broken heart emoji, that only fueled speculation about where she was and why she hadn't been there. Some fans were quick to blame Claressa, saying she should have seen the tension and stopped it. Others defended her, saying nobody could have predicted Eazy would snap like that. Inside the hospital, the situation was critical. Doctors worked for hours to stabilize Papoose, to make sure the swelling in his brain didn't get worse. Claressa stayed in the waiting room, her face buried in her hands. People who saw her said she looked like she was carrying the weight of every single mistake that had led them there. At some point, a nurse came to update her, and she nodded slowly, too exhausted to react. Whether she was relieved or terrified, nobody could really tell. Eazy spent the night in police custody. He didn't deny what he'd done. According to officers, he kept repeating that he'd had enough, that he wasn't going to let Papoose humiliate him any longer. He insisted that everyone would understand once the truth came out. But what truth was he talking about? Was it about Claressa? About Remy? About some secret grudge that had been festering for years? Nobody had answers. Only speculation and grainy videos that didn't show the entire story. By the next morning, every major gossip outlet had picked up the story. Headlines screamed about betrayal, violence, and jealousy. Fans divided into camps, each side convinced they knew who was to blame. Some said Eazy had always been volatile, that he was jealous of Papoose's reputation and relationship with Remy. Others claimed Papoose had crossed a line with Claressa, flaunting something that should have stayed private. And then there were those who didn't care about any of that. They just wanted to know if he was going to survive. Late in the day, a spokesperson for the hospital confirmed that Papoose was awake, but in serious condition. He'd suffered a concussion, multiple fractures, and significant blood loss. He was expected to recover, but the road ahead would be long. When Claressa finally emerged from the hospital, she looked hollowed out, her eyes swollen from crying. She didn't speak to reporters. She just climbed into a waiting car and drove away, leaving everyone to wonder what she'd say when she was ready. As for Eazy, he was formally charged with aggravated assault and held on bail. His lawyers released a statement claiming he had acted in self-defense, a claim that nobody who watched the videos seemed to believe. Still, the legal battle was only beginning. And so was the unraveling of every relationship tangled up in that single, violent night. This story isn't over. There are too many unanswered questions, too many secrets left unspoken. But one thing is certain, the lives of everyone involved have changed forever. And as the days go by, more details will come out, more footage, more confessions, more heartache. So if you think you've seen everything, think again, because this is just the beginning. If you made it to the end of this video, let me know in the comments what you believe really happened that night. Do you think Eazy was pushed to the edge, or was this always who he was behind closed doors? And what about Claressa? Was she an innocent bystander or something more? Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any updates as this story continues to unfold in ways none of us could have imagined.